the terrorist attack that happened, I believe, on Wednesday in Washington, D.C., where 2 members of the National Guard in West Virginia were shot by a terrorist from Afghanistan who was here as part of the withdrawal from Afghanistan, was one of the refugees, and it has actually caused a bit of an uproar because now President Trump has said, we're going to put a pause on all asylum decisions until we have a better vetting process. Of course, this all happened during the really botched and failed Afghan withdrawal, which, of course, we all remember.
It was a horrific tragedy that happened just the day before Thanksgiving, where this individual, Rahmanullah Lakanwal, came from Washington State, drove all the way to Washington, D.C. to carry out this terror by shooting 2 members of the National Guard, one of which has passed away as a result of the injuries. And what we're seeing now is more scrutiny on this program, Operation Allies Welcome, which was initiated by President Biden after that botched withdrawal. And we all remember the imagery. People, planefuls of people, were coming to the United States unvetted, brought straight here to get out of Afghanistan because of the chaos that the Biden administration caused. 190,000 Afghans have resettled under both Operation Allies Welcome and Enduring Welcome, which was the follow-up program. And now we're starting to see what we brought up you in that series that you hosted, Revenge of the Taliban. We were already concerned that when you saw this influx without proper vetting, that this kind of thing would eventually happen. And now, unfortunately, we are seeing this happen. There's reports, and we'll get into these details, but more than 5,000 Afghans that have come under this program have been flagged for terrorist-related activity. The U.S. Customs and Immigration Naturalization Services put out a list of individuals that came out of this program that have committed violence, crime, unspeakable things since coming to the United States. And this is just another in the list of horrible things that happened because the policy was not well thought through, and the chaos that ensued brought all these people to the country without proper vetting.
At this point, we have to look at what the future holds for asylum seekers, as well as the entire immigration debate, which has come up obviously over and over and over again during President Trump's second term here. And I do think that President Trump does himself no favors when some of the ways he's been speaking recently over the last few weeks, whether that's using insults, whether that's using beyond insults, using things that we can't say on the air necessarily, using words that I think people would find, inappropriate, not even just for an adult, but maybe for the President of the United States, certainly, that it overshadows whatever good he's doing because it looks so bad from a visual point of view. Now, some of that's from frustration. Some of it's from frustration because moments like this happen that should not be happening in the streets of America. And I understand that. I understand when you put your National Guardsmen in the streets of America, Washington, D.C., and you want them to go clean up the streets and protect crime, that you're not thinking about the fact that we legally allowed in a group of people who are potentially should have been flagged for terrorist activity before they were allowed in.
Well, and this is the problem. So what the president has done now is ordered that the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, which is a branch under Department of Homeland Security, will no longer approve or deny asylum claims right now. So the pause is on the decision process. Those people that work in there can continue the work, the vetting, under the protocols that exist currently. But once they get up to the line of approve or deny, all those decisions are put on hold. And it's not just for those that have come from Afghanistan. It's for all asylum seekers. And this has been a problem that we saw the way that both the Biden administration and really even the Obama administration before that used the asylum process improperly. It was used, instead of using the traditional immigration pathway to citizenship or pathway to immigration status in the United States, people started coming to the United States and immediately claiming asylum. And that's a different process. It sets them apart. They get a court date. They get resources, legal resources to try and get through this to see if they indeed are granted or worthy of being granted asylum in the United States. Then we saw that people would skip their court dates. They'd use that as a tool to be let go from a normal border patrol operation and then just infiltrate into the country and just disseminate throughout it. This is a different part of that same problem. That's why he put the pause on all decisions. But this is where We were concerned about those people whose lives would be in danger because they helped fight with Americans. The translators that went through so much, whose families were targeted. We were saying, you're leaving people behind because of the chaos and the lack of vetting. They were just filling up airplanes with people from Afghanistan that may have never even been a part of helping the United States, that may have been Taliban themselves, may have been another Al-Qaeda group or something. And that was what we said. This is going to come back and haunt the United States. And now we're seeing the fruit of that. And unfortunately, you have a National Guardsman that has been killed. You have one that is in critical condition. You have another case where someone was arrested last week as well, came here under the same program and was constructing a bomb and was going to use this bomb in Fort Worth, Texas. He's been arrested on terrorism charges. This is another person through that same program. There's also reports that up to 5,000 people who have come in under this program have been flagged for, after they've gotten here, potential problematic information in their background or things that they're doing once they get here as potentially having ties to terrorism. That's the problem. When you're letting in 100,000 plus people with 260,000 still waiting for some sort of permission to come over, is that if the vetting protocols are completely absent, then you can't even trust that those people that were vetted were properly vetted to be here, and then they're already in the country. They're inside the United States. They can get away. They don't have to go to their hearings if they are malicious actors. And this is what you end up seeing.
We saw 13 murdered during the Kabul withdrawal. And of course now, and that was of military service people. Now we can add another one, and another one very in critical shape, to terrorist activity directly involved from the Afghanistan withdrawal. And as Will said, we were everyone was very moved by this. And when it happened, it's easy to think about this as multiple years ago now. It was 2021. We're talking about almost 5 years ago now, 4.5 years ago from when that happened. But President Trump was actually warning about this back in 2017, that it could get to this place. I think we should listen to him, bite 6.
The consequences of a rapid exit are both predictable and unacceptable. 9/11, the worst terrorist attack in our history, was planned and directed from Afghanistan because that country was ruled by a government that gave comfort and shelter to terrorists. A hasty withdrawal would create a vacuum that terrorists, including ISIS and Al-Qaeda, would instantly fill, just as happened before September 11th.
I mean, that could sound like it was from today, and actually it was from 8 years ago when the president was in his first term as president of the United States, warning why a hasty withdrawal from Afghanistan could result in a disaster. And of course, what happened? President Trump was no longer the president. Biden said, let's get out of Afghanistan, did it in a way that was unacceptable, and we can remember the horrific footage from that. And it resulted in multiple service members dying, being murdered in terrorist attacks, thousands of people clinging to their lives as we left Afghanistan under the control of the Taliban, all of the military weaponry. And then now we're seeing the fruits of that labor, sadly. Rick, you were involved in that video that we had, involved in that documentary series we did so many years ago now, as it was unfolding, warning that this could happen. This was, of course, the very early days of the Biden administration, saying the influx of what was going to happen. And it didn't have to do with the people who were seeking asylum for the right reasons, but we knew when we saw thousands upon thousands of people that the vetting could not be what it needed to be. And sadly, years later, we are now seeing the fruits of that.
Well, I remember speaking to you all about this situation back in 2021, where I came forward and said, look, I've got friends and former colleagues in Germany who are telling me that the vetting is not happening, that they're being pushed by the Biden people to rush through, to use a hunch when they're interviewing somebody if they don't have enough information. Imagine that directive of you are going to interview people coming out of a war zone. And if they don't have proper paperwork, if you don't have enough information about them, just use your hunch on whether or not they should come into the United States. That's outrageous. But that was being done by the Biden team. And I heard this over and over multiple times from my colleagues in Frankfurt when I was ambassador to Germany. We have a very large consulate in Frankfurt. That's a place where we do a lot of the vetting. I remember even telling you all that there were some stories that I was hearing from individuals that there would be plane loads of Afghans coming from Kuwait that would touch down in Germany to refuel and then go on to the United States. And there was no vetting. The State Department didn't know, DHS did not know who exactly was on that flight, other than a bunch of Afghans trying to get out of Afghanistan. They were pushed right into the United States, unvetted. And I think this is a big problem because we have hundreds of millions of people that are trying to come into our country. We are very generous when it comes to visas, immigration services, even citizenship. America is the most generous country in the world when it comes to immigration. But we have to vet. Otherwise, we don't know who's coming in, and it creates huge problems for the people inside the United States already, Americans who are here.